Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Have you ever been put in a position where someone else's lie became your problem? Imagine this. Your boss shakes hands with a massive client and promises them something that is physically impossible. And then he walks away and leaves you to deliver the bad news. What do? Do you play along with the lie to save your job? Or do you tell the truth and risk the fallout? In today's story, we're stepping into the high-pressure world of tech design, where a huge promise meets the hard laws of physics. As you listen to how our main character handles this massive workplace dilemma, you're going to learn essential real-world English. We'll cover business idioms, phrases for pushing back against your boss, and how to deliver bad news professionally without losing your cool. And make sure you pay close attention to the bold words throughout the story. Are you ready? Let's jump into Chapter 1.
The top floor of ZyloPulse was quiet, except for the confident, booming voice of Marcus. Marcus was the kind of CEO who could sell sand in a desert. He possessed a rare, dangerous charisma that made people believe in miracles. Unfortunately, as lead product engineer, it was Clara's job to make those miracles actually work. Today, Marcus was hosting Elena Sterling, a sharp investor known for her zero-nonsense approach to business. Clara stood near the window, holding a prototype of their new wearable device. It was beautiful, sleek, and thin, but it had one major limitation. With its current size, the battery could only last for 5 days. Suddenly, Marcus leaned across the glass table, his eyes shining with excitement. "Elena, I know other companies have failed," he said, offering a bright, confident smile. "But ZyloPulse is different. We have re-engineered the battery. I guarantee you that this sleek wristband will run for 6 months on a single charge." Clara's heart stopped. She stared at Marcus, her jaw slightly open. 6 months? That was not just difficult, it was physically impossible. Elena raised an eyebrow, looking intrigued but skeptical. 6 months? If you can actually deliver that, Marcus, we have a deal. I will sign the contract today. "Absolutely," Marcus said, without a single second of hesitation. He stood up and quickly extended his hand. "Let's shake on it." As they shook hands, Clara felt a cold, heavy knot form deep in her stomach. Marcus had just landed the most important deal in his company's history by telling a massive, dangerous lie that she would now have to somehow fix.
Clara sat at her desk, staring at the glowing computer monitor. The official, signed contract with Elena Sterling was lying right next to her keyboard. She opened her engineering software and began to run the numbers. She calculated the energy consumption of the screen, the sensors, and the Bluetooth chip. Then she looked at the exact physical dimensions of the sleek wristband prototype. No matter how many times she checked her formulas, the result was always identical. To store enough energy to last for 6 months, the lithium-ion battery would need to be huge. It would literally be the size and weight of a construction brick. "This violates the basic laws of physics," Clara whispered to herself, rubbing her tired eyes. She felt a massive wave of anxiety wash over her. Marcus hadn't just overpromised, he promised a total fantasy. Just then, her assistant David walked into the office, holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked at Clara's pale face and the complicated equations on her whiteboard. "Is everything okay?" David asked, setting a coffee cup down on her desk. "You look like you just saw a ghost." Clara pointed a trembling finger at the screen. Marcus promised Elena that this tiny device would run for half a year without a charge. David stared at the monitor, his eyes widening in complete shock as he read the numbers. 6 months? He gasped, nearly spilling his own drink. That is physically impossible. Exactly, Clara said, leaning back in her chair with a heavy sigh. And now we are the ones who have to deal with the reality of this impossible situation. Clara walked briskly down the hallway toward the corner office, holding her laptop tightly against her chest. She stopped in front of the glass door, took a deep breath to calm her nerves, and knocked. "Come in," Marcus shouted cheerfully from inside, not looking up from his tablet. Clara stepped inside the luxurious office and stood right in front of his massive mahogany desk. "Marcus, we need to talk about the Sterling contract," Clara said, keeping her voice calm and professional. Marcus finally looked up, a bright, confident smile spreading across his face. "Clara, isn't it fantastic? We secured the biggest investor in the history of ZyloPulse." "It is great for the company, Marcus, but we have a massive technical problem," she replied gently. She placed her laptop on his desk and turned the screen so he could see her engineering models. "I ran the numbers multiple times, and a 6-month battery life is physically impossible with these dimensions." Marcus's smile faded instantly, replaced by a slight frown of annoyance. "Clara, you are looking at this from a very narrow perspective," Marcus said, waving his hand dismissively. "But with all due respect, Marcus, this isn't an opinion. It is basic physics," she pushed back firmly. "The battery would need to be the size of a brick to hold that much power." Marcus stood up, walked over to the window, and looked out at the city below with his hands in his pockets. "I don't care about the size of a brick, Clara. I care about vision and innovation. Stop thinking like a cautious engineer and start thinking like a pioneer," he said, turning back to face her. "I promised Elena 6 months, and our job now is to find a clever workaround to make it happen." Clara stared at her boss, completely stunned by his total refusal to accept reality. "There is no workaround for the laws of thermodynamics, Marcus," Clara said quietly. Marcus leaned over his desk, his face serious. "Figure it out, Clara. Failure is not an option here." Clara walked back into the engineering lab, where the bright overhead lights felt blinding. The room was filled with the quiet hum of computer fans and the anxious murmurs of her team. 6 engineers sat around the large central table, surrounded by loose wires, empty coffee cups, and crumpled energy drink cans. "Any luck with Marcus?" David asked, looking up with dark circles under his bloodshot eyes. Clara simply shook her head, and a heavy, suffocating silence fell over the entire room. For the past 3 days, the team had been burning the candle at both ends, trying to find a loophole. They tested alternative battery chemistries, simulated extreme power-saving modes, and stripped away essential features. But every single simulation ended in the exact same failure message on their screens. Morale was hitting rock bottom as everyone realized they were being forced to chase a complete ghost. "We're hitting a brick wall over and over again," another engineer named Sarah muttered, throwing her pen onto the table in frustration. "We can't optimize our way out of basic physics, Clara. It's just not going to happen." Clara looked around at her exhausted, stressed team and felt a terrible weight on her shoulders. As their leader, she knew that keeping quiet was actively hurting them and draining their creative energy. Worse, she knew that continuing this lie would eventually destroy the company's reputation completely. "Listen to me, everyone," Clara said, raising her voice so the whole room could hear her clearly. "Stop running the simulations. Go home, get some sleep, and leave this to me." David looked at her with a mix of relief and worry. "What are you going to do, Clara?" Clara closed her laptop with a sharp click. "I'm going to stop trying to fix an impossible promise." The morning of the first major milestone review arrived, and the atmosphere inside ZyloPulse was electric with tension. Clara stood by the coffee machine, her hands shaking slightly as she held her mug. Suddenly, Marcus walked into the break room, looking sharp in an expensive suit and holding a flash drive. "Clara, glad I caught you," Marcus said, flashing a bright but nervous smile as he handed her the drive. "Here are the presentation slides for our meeting with Elena Sterling in 1 hour." Clara immediately took the drive back to her desk, plugged it in, and opened the file. As she scrolled through the pages, her heart began to beat wildly against her ribs. Marcus had completely filled the presentation with highly exaggerated graphs and fake performance projections. One slide featured a massive glowing green chart showing the battery lasting for 6 whole months with 0 degradation. "Clara, you can't be serious," Clara said, walking straight back into his office without knocking. "These numbers are completely made up. You are asking me to fudge the numbers in front of an investor." Marcus closed his office door quickly and turned around, his expression suddenly defensive and cold. "I am not asking you to lie, Clara. I am asking you to present a gilded version of our future goals," he countered. "Elena is a sharp investor, but she needs to see a confident trajectory to keep funding us." Clara stood her ground, facing a massive ethical dilemma that could ruin her professional reputation forever. "Presenting this data isn't a trajectory, Marcus. It is intentional deception, and I'm the one presenting it," she said firmly. Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "If we lose this contract, the whole department is gone. Just present the slides, handle the technical questions smoothly, and let me manage the relationship." Clara sat at the long boardroom table, the fake presentation slides glowing brightly on the large wall screen. Elena Sterling sat directly opposite her, wearing a sharp gray suit and looking intensely focused. Marcus sat at the head of the table, leaning forward and nodding confidently as Clara spoke. Clara felt a heavy layer of sweat on her palms as she clicked to the next slide. It was the specific graph showing the impossible 6-month battery life projection. Elena instantly leaned in closer, her sharp eyes narrowing as she studied the numbers. "Clara, look at this specific power consumption metric," Elena said, pointing at the screen. "How exactly does your sensor array maintain a low voltage without draining the cell over that time frame?" Clara's throat went completely dry. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was completely put on the spot, knowing that any technical answer she gave would be a total lie. Suddenly, Marcus's phone began to vibrate loudly on the glass table, breaking the tense silence. Marcus looked at the screen, feigning a look of deep shock and professional concern. "I am so incredibly sorry, Elena," Marcus said, standing up quickly and smooth-talking his way out. "This is an urgent emergency call from our European manufacturing partner that I absolutely must take. Clara can handle any technical questions you have while I am gone," he added, heading for the exit. Before Clara could even object, Marcus flipped out of the room, closing the door firmly behind him. Clara was left holding the bag, completely alone in the boardroom with a highly skeptical investor. Elena turned her full attention back to Clara, her gaze steady and unreadable. "Well, Clara," Elena said, crossing her arms, "let's skip the corporate marketing fluff. Tell me exactly how your engineering team managed to break the laws of physics."
Clara looked at the glowing screen, then looked back at Elena's expectant face. The silence in the boardroom felt heavy, suffocating, and entirely too long. Clara knew that this was the exact moment that would define her career and her personal integrity. With a slow, deliberate movement, she reached forward and closed her laptop screen completely. The bright green graph vanished from the wall, plunging the room into natural daylight. "To be perfectly frank, Elena,
"We didn't break the laws of physics," Clara said, her voice steadying. "The reality of the situation is that a 6-month battery life with these dimensions is completely impossible." Elena did not blink or gasp. She simply leaned back in her leather chair, her expression unreadable. "Go on," Elena said quietly, gesturing toward the empty whiteboard on the side wall. Clara stood up, grabbed a black dry erase marker, and walked confidently to the board. She drew a simple diagram comparing lithium-ion energy density with the physical space inside the wristband. She broke it down gently, explaining the math in plain, clear terms that anyone could understand. "Even if we turn off the display and every single sensor, the battery dies in 2 weeks," Clara explained. "Marcus wanted to give you a visionary promise, but as an engineer, I cannot give you a lie." Clara finished her explanation, capped her marker, and braced herself for the inevitable corporate explosion. Elena stared at the whiteboard for a few long seconds, then slowly let out a deep breath. The boardroom door clicked open, and Marcus stepped back into the room with a confident smile. He looked refreshed, completely unaware that the entire foundation of his lie had just been demolished. "Apologies for the delay," Marcus said smoothly, adjusting his jacket as he walked toward his seat. "Now, where were we? I assume Clara has cleared up any minor technical doubts about our 6-month timeline?" Elena did not answer right away. She slowly turned her head to look directly at the CEO. The freezing cold temperature of her gaze froze Marcus mid-stride, his smile faltering slightly. "Clara was actually very helpful," Elena said, her voice dropping into a dangerous, quiet tone. "She explained that your 6-month promise is a physical impossibility and that your data is entirely fabricated." Marcus's face turned an immediate bright shade of crimson as he scrambled to save the deal. "Elena, please, let me explain," Marcus stammered, attempting to backtrack and damage control. "Clara is a brilliant engineer, but she is being overly cautious about our early-stage projections." "Enough, Marcus," Elena said, slamming her hand down onto the glass table with a sharp crack. "I am not angry about the physical limitation of a battery. I am furious that you looked me in the eye and lied. This is a massive breach of trust, and I do not do business with people who treat me like a fool." She stood up, packed her tablet into her briefcase, and walked toward the exit without looking back. The meeting ended abruptly, leaving Marcus staring at the whiteboard in absolute shock and silent fury. Clara arrived at the office early the next morning, expecting to find a pink slip on her desk. The hallway was dead silent, and she could see Marcus pacing furiously inside his office through the glass. She sat down at her desk, took a deep breath, and opened her laptop to check her inbox. Right at the top was an email from Elena Sterling, sent directly to Clara, with Marcus CC'd on the message. Clara clicked it, her heart thumping against her ribs as she began to read the formal text. "Clara, I want to thank you for your absolute honesty during yesterday's meeting," the email began. "It is rare to find an engineer who values professional integrity over a quick corporate paycheck. While I am withdrawing my original investment from Marcus's unrealistic proposal, there is a silver lining. I am still deeply interested in the core technology of ZyloPulse, but only under one condition. I want to salvage the deal, but your engineering team must lead the project scope, not sales." Clara gasped out loud, a massive wave of relief washing away her anxiety from the past week. She immediately grabbed her tablet and walked straight into Marcus's office, showing him the screen. Marcus read the email, his face turning pale as he realized his career was hanging by a thread. "We have an opportunity to pivot, Marcus," Clara said, her voice confident and completely calm.
We can present a realistic alternative, a 2-week battery life utilizing highly optimized solar charging glass. Marcus looked at the screen, then up at Clara, slowly nodding his head as he accepted his defeat. "Okay, Clara," Marcus whispered, his voice completely stripped of its usual corporate bravado. "Show me the plan."
Three weeks later, the atmosphere inside the engineering lab at ZyloPulse had completely transformed. The heavy, suffocating stress was gone, replaced by the energetic hum of actual progress. Clara stood at the head of the central table, looking at a brand new prototype of the wristband. It was still beautiful and sleek, but now it featured a microlayer of advanced solar glass. Elena Sterling stood right next to her, watching closely as David ran a live power consumption test. The screen glowed, showing a highly stable, highly realistic 2-week battery life projection. "This is exactly what I wanted to see," Elena said, a genuine smile replacing her usual sharp expression. "Real data, real physics, and a realistic product that we can actually manufacture and sell." She turned to Clara and shook her hand warmly, officially sealing the newly recalibrated contract. Marcus stood near the back of the room, quietly observing the successful interaction without interrupting. He had learned a painful, hard-earned lesson about the severe dangers of over-promising to clients. By standing her ground and choosing integrity over deception, Clara had completely salvaged the company's future. She had not only saved her team's jobs, but she had also earned the permanent respect of the entire industry. As Elena left, Clara looked out the window at the city, finally feeling at peace with her career choice. Moving forward, ZyloPulse would be known for under-promising and consistently over-delivering on its word.
And that brings us to the end of our story. Clara chose absolute honesty, and it completely saved her career and her company's future. It just goes to show that in the professional world, integrity is always worth more than a quick, risky shortcut. I hope this story gave you some valuable tools and real-world English phrases to help you navigate your own professional life. Take a moment to practice using phrases like push back or under-promise and over-deliver in the comments section below. I love reading your sentences and seeing how you apply these expressions to your own experiences. And you can find all the vocabulary of the story down below in the description box. If you loved learning real-world English through this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and keep bringing you more stories about real-life challenges. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in our next video.
Goodbye.